This is Dean's...
Testing, 1, 2, test.
1, 2, 3, testing. This is brine shrimp.
No, this is brine shrimp. God, we're going to have some great outtakes. That's a guppy.
So this is Dean's fry system, and I can think of nothing better right now than to hear the story straight from you. How it works, how you made it, what kind of fish you actually put in this, because I know probably not every fish you breed would go into this.
Right.
Plus, somewhere, we have the kind of evolution of things.
Of the trays.
Yeah, of how you got to this point as well.
Yeah. So the whole fry system idea started probably over 30 years ago.
Right.
I was breeding almost exclusively discus and some Apistos dwarf cichlids, basically.
Yeah.
And I had like, I don't know, 21 to 22, 23 pairs of discus going. Had a much larger fish room than this. It was like about 4 times this size.
Yeah.
And I had this 14-foot long counter with a laundry sink on the one end. Obviously had auto water changing working back there. A little bit different than what I'm doing here. It was more manual than this is very automated.
Very automated.
So on that counter, I had racked 5-gallon tanks like the 10s are on the end. Oh, you know what? We're going to have to kill the cat. So just excuse me for just a second.
That worked really well.
One more time. Keep going. Thank you.
So obedient.
In each one of those tanks, I floated one of these trays. So this is actually from days gone by. This is a microwave dinner tray.
Really?
It's what you used to. But if you feel it, it's much thicker than the microwave trays we get today.
Oh yeah.
It's very sturdy. So this is literally probably 35 years old. I would glue a screen on, made out of whatever. At first it was just pantyhose that I used, but later I found some better mesh.
Yeah.
And I would just glue it on, and it took to glue. And my original ones floated in a styrofoam thing. I later switched it to PVC because I figured out that this floated when it was sealed.
Yeah.
Each tank had one of these in it. And then above each tank, there was a shelf, the whole length of the counter. And I literally had so I had 14 tanks. I had 14 5-gallon buckets.
Wow.
And every morning I would fill those 5-gallon buckets with water to, you know, whatever it was. I think it was 84 degrees. And each one had a drip siphon that dripped into the trays.
Oh, so gravity feed.
Yeah. And then I could control it with a plastic air valve back then.
Yeah.
So I was hatching the discus artificially and feeding them artificially. So I would feed the discus in the 5-gallon tanks, and the 5-gallon tanks all had these little overflow hoses hooked to them, not through a bulkhead like we would use today.
Right.
They were just holes in the side of the tank. I figured out that bucket would drip for about 8 hours. So I would set it up in the morning, let it drip.
Do you reckon it'd be similar flow to what's there now, or would you?
No, it's smaller.
Slower.
It was more like we'll take that one for example.
Yeah.
So
and that would take about 8 hours.
Kind of a constant drip.
Yep.
And then I had air very similar to what we see here, just bubbling in there.
Yep.
And that's where the whole thing started. I needed a way of keeping the water clean, because in the early days, what we were using to feed the fry was egg yolk,
which is very dirty.
And it causes botulism really quickly if it fouls the water. So I needed to keep the water clean throughout the day. Yet I wanted the fish to have food throughout the day also when I wasn't there.
Yeah.
I became very successful at that. I was raising literally thousands and thousands of discus, shipping them all over the country, and having fun doing it. And this was all before, you know, the whole internet, digital revolution, all of that. So that's where it started. And then and that fish room ended up, we sold the house and moved away. So all of a sudden, now I'm in a smaller house, smaller space. How can I duplicate that?
Yeah.
You know, so My next fry system was 5-gallon tanks hooked up to water filter like what we have over here.
Yeah.
You know, so it would, and then it would just slowly drip in similar to this, and then go down the drains. But I only had like room for 5 or 6 tanks, so my production obviously went way down.
Yeah.
Right. And I was using the same trays at that time. That was fish room number 2. This is fish room number 3, and it's only 10 by 10.
Wow.
Not including the office tanks, but the office tanks are not really set up to be fish room tanks. So I don't have a bunch of counter space. I didn't have a bunch of space for other tanks. So then I started dialing in, how can I make a fry system that works? So first off, the reason to use a tray, or like in this case, this is a yogurt cup with a screen on the bottom, and it's using a styrofoam cup lid to float it. This is a cheap plastic bowl from the dollar store. I'm using window backer rod.
Love that idea.
To float it.
Yeah.
And why we use the small container is, if you observe the behavior of cichlids raising their fry, the one thing they do is they keep the fry in a close, refined space.
Yeah.
And like rams will move their fry to where they think there's food. So we have to duplicate that if we're going to take those fry away from the parents. And I had already become used to being the fish parent, so to speak. Artificially raising discus, angels, pistos, and that's where I came up with the trays floating in a 20-gallon tank. Now, the reason they're floating is temperature. It's the only reason.
Yeah.
But there is a backup reason. I'm not dripping fresh water in. I'm using this as my fresh water. So I'm filtering the 20-gallon tank through a canister filter.
Yeah.
So that's the biological filter. And I'm floating the trays for temperature.
Yeah.
So
it's almost like acclimating fish when you put the bag in your tank.
Exactly.
But it's like constantly, because they're living in the bag almost.
Yeah. So the tray keeps the fry close proximity.
Yeah.
I can adjust the flow depending on what fry are in there. Sometimes, like for instance, the German blue rams are in this tray. When I first put them in, when they were just barely swimming, I would turn it down to just a little drip like that.
Yeah.
And then as they become more swimming, you want them to get some exercise with their food. You turn it up a little bit. And the contrast that with Sturbe Cories or Plecos, high flow all the time. So it gave me the freedom to adjust the flow. I can also individually adjust the air. And I can see if they've eaten, because I painted the bottoms of all the trays white. And you know when you feed baby brine shrimp.
Too as well.
Yeah, and I can see the fry.
Yeah.
Right. So these trays came later. They're actually a food storage or a refrigerator type tray.
Yeah.
They're designed to be pulled in and out of a shelf like this. They don't have screws in them. They don't have a hole in them. And they're not painted white on the bottom. They're just clear. And that's the current tray that I'm using. I cut a slot in the back. That's for the overflow. The sponge is cut with a slit in it so that it basically holds itself in place like that.
Yeah. And then nothing can swim out.
And then the screws are to hold the back up where the front hooks on the front of the tank perfectly.
Yeah.
I've actually got other trays that people are 3D printing now that work pretty good. I've tried other trays. Whenever I go to a dollar store, I'm always looking at the next tray. You know, I've actually even contacted this company and asked them if they can make them in white for me.
Interesting.
But I would have to order 10 billion of them. So they said no. So that's kind of where the whole tray system came from. And then, you know, then it's just a process of duplication. There's also, you know, you have to decide what temperature you're running it. A while ago, I was really working on breeding discus in here.
Yeah.
The temperature of this would be 84, 85 degrees.
Yeah.
It works really good for discus and rams, and even angels would be okay, and sturbe cories.
Yeah.
But if I put guppies or electric blue acaras, it would be too warm.
Right.
So now I'm kind of running it. It's showing 83 degrees. It's about 82, 82 and a half. And I can do the angels, the sturbes, the rams. The rams will grow just a little bit slower than what we're used to.
Yeah.
But you know, the fish are only lasting in here maybe 2 to 3 weeks, and then they go to a 10-gallon tank.
Okay, so this is like the very start of their life.
Yes. Yeah. No, not really.
Well, I guess starts in the tank.
The very start would be, I usually hatch in a jar, or on the other end there's that container with the sturbe eggs in it.
Yeah.
The specimen container.
Yeah.
I usually start in one of those because I don't want methylene blue in here.
Yeah, because that would pollute the whole thing.
It would pollute all of them. I mean, it's not going to hurt the rest, but I still don't want it in there.
Yeah.
So once they're free swimming, they go into a tray.
So from free swimming to 2-3 weeks.
Yes.
Then they go to 10-gallon tank.
Right.
Yeah.
So like if we're looking over there, the ones in the second tank were moved out of the tray earlier this week.
Nice.
And they're now about 2 weeks old, I believe.
Yeah.
And the others far older. You know, obviously.
Those ones over there.
Yeah, they're far older. And then these ones, the electric blue acaras, they've been in the tray about a week. And I'm thinking this next week they'll go into the empty 10-gallon.
Yeah.
So I try to always have a tank or two empty.
Yeah, so that you've got room
so I have
to put
place
them
to move them. Yeah.
I've also just seen this as well. There's a power head in the bottom of the tank.
Yes. Okay. There's a couple different things. So the way the whole system works, and you'll get B-roll up in here probably.
Yeah, yeah.
Is there's 2 sponges on the intakes of filters.
Mm-hmm.
The one in front here.
What you doing?
Sorry, cat. Out, please. We're trying to film, and you're not supposed to be in here.
Yeah.
Oh well. So the one in front is a pre-filter for the canister filter.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all it's for. The one in back is a pre-filter for the power head.
Okay.
And the power head basically pushes water up this tube into this pipe.
Yeah.
So what I found is I've got 7 or 8 of these across. The 2 end ones are running full blast all the time. And then all the rest are adjustable. And I can turn them on and off and adjust them any way I want. Kitty cat, thank you. He's being ornery tonight. That's the way it goes. So the power head is powering the water, but it's not really acting as a filter other than the pre-filter.
Yeah, just a sponge.
The whole tank is getting filtered.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing I found is this little is more like a box filter, kind of.
Yeah.
It's made out of ceramic, but it's a box filter. Inside there is a little bit of coral nuggets.
Okay.
So that's only to keep my pH from crashing.
Yeah.
That's the
That's
only
handy.
reason. Because my water's out of the tap is soft.
Same.
And the pH will crash if I don't have a little bit. So there's just enough where I'm not making it harder, but I'm not letting
just
it
keeping it
crash.
stable.
I'm keeping it stable. Then I found this is I forget what they call those.
A power head. Flow. Oh, well, flow.
It's a flow thing.
Yeah. Oh,
They use them in marine tanks. What do they call these things?
like a wave magnet?
Yeah, similar, but it's going constantly.
Yeah.
It's not fluctuating.
Power head. Something.
So all it's doing is keeping any debris that settles on the bottom
Over to the filter
moving so it gets picked up in the filter.
Yeah.
Because there will be, baby brine shrimp that get through the sponges on the back of the,
Yeah.
this sponge. There can be fine particles that go through that.
Yeah. And then they just end up in a dead spot, I guess.
And
over there, if you
they
didn't
would.
have that.
But I found if I put that in there, I don't get a dead spot.
the thing I really like about this is that you can keep everything in such a small refined
Right.
spot, but have the water volume of that whatever
Right.
tank.
20-gallon tank.
20-gallon
20
tank.
long. 20 long.
Yeah.
And we were talking earlier, if I had the room, I would do 2 of these.
Yeah.
One warm and one colder or cooler.
Yeah.
Not colder, but cooler.
Yeah.
I don't have the room, so I'm stuck with one.
And-
But if you notice, I've got 5 trays in there right now.
Yeah.
If I change them all out for these smaller trays, I could have 7.
Do you find there's a difference between the two? Like one's more
Larger, like the electric
bigger
blue rams,
species, I guess.
is a lot of fish in there.
Yeah.
I think they don't. I don't think they would do good in a narrower tray.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So, if it's a smaller hatch, I use a smaller tray. Larger hatches I use, and the catfish tend to like the bigger, flatter ones.
Yeah.
And plecos same way. If there's plecos, I mean, you notice most trays have a little bit of Java moss in them.
Yeah.
If there's plecos, I would also put a piece of wood in there.
First food.
Just, yeah, something.
So I think my next question is, like, what kind of species? Does it work for all species? Or is it, you know, I guess what you're breeding here?
So, I've raised plecos, cories, all sorts of live bears, all sorts of rams, angels, discus. I've done rice fish, some tetras.
Heaps of stuff.
Yeah, so just about everything.
Yeah.
The only thing that hasn't gone in here is puffers, because I never made it old enough.
Yeah.
But they would have gone in there if I would have. So yeah, so I think it works for all. I think the thing you have to be careful is like rice fish. They like the surface really quiet at first.
So you'd have to have...
So turn the flow
drips
down to a drip.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And obviously plecos like it more current, so turn it up.
Yeah.
And I have that ability to do that. And it's, you know, it's basically a DIY thing. It's not hard. I mean,
Yeah.
this all came from the hardware store. The valves I got online. I've got 2 different types of valves. Depending on how you run your air, you know, you might have a normal air valves, but I attached it to the back
Yeah.
just because proximity made it easier. Yeah, I mean, it just works amazingly.
So for people at home, what are the components that people are going to need? I guess you can just kind of just like run through it so that if people want to replicate this,
Right.
they can also have a crack at it.
So to power it, you're going to need some sort of power head or water pump.
Yeah.
Obviously, you need something that can pump the water a foot or however 10 inches out of the water.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to need to build this A-frame bracket that holds the pipes. And they're relatively, you know, it's relatively simple. It's a couple elbows, you
Is
know.
it like aluminium strip or something?
This is
Steel?
just from the hardware. It's aluminum
Yeah.
from the hardware store. It will corrode up a little bit,
Yeah.
but
It's not really
it
getting
doesn't,
wet at those points, I guess.
No, it doesn't really flake off in the water.
Yeah.
Heater if you need it.
Yeah.
This isn't necessary, but I like it.
I like that idea.
You know,
too.
I just
Yeah.
like, then I can at least see if it's clean or dirty,
Yeah.
right? Because algae will form. I'm seeing some little spots up here and some on the end. It will form. And so how do you clean the algae off of this if you've got all these trays up here with fish? It's
That's a
really
good question.
hard. So about every 5-6 months, I will take the trays out and I'll scrub the tank completely clean,
Yeah.
and then basically do a giant water change and fill it back up. So
Could you use a magnet scrubber? Like a...
yep,
Yeah.
yep, but it won't go between the tray and the glass.
Yeah,
so
then
you
it'll
have
just build up in that
yeah.
point.
So, and then the trays, you know, these all came off of Amazon. They're not the easiest to find. It's
What do you call them? Like...
the company calls them. The company is called iDesign,
Yeah.
just like it sounds, big I and then design. And they're the Linux series of storage trays.
Okay.
Linux, like Charlie Brown and Linux. sometimes you might have to go 4 or 5 pages deep on Amazon to find them,
Yeah.
but eventually you will find them.
Yeah.
They actually come in 3 sizes. One size is bigger. It's as wide as these two together.
Yeah, so huge one.
Yeah, I don't use that size.
Yeah.
Because I don't
Overkill.
have the space.
Yeah.
And this is my favorite size over this.
Yeah.
But if I have too many fry, I can only fit 4 of these on a 20 long, where I can add more if I do that.
Yeah.
So.
And then you need, I guess, some bolts to go at the back.
Those are just 1.5 number 8 stainless steel bolts.
Yeah, probably like marine grade or something.
And I use the nuts that are nylock, I think they're called.
Yeah.
They have the nylon insert, so they're like self-locking.
Yeah.
And then this on the back, you don't have to have that, but I do it. It's the electrical shrink wrap tape, or the electrical shrink wrap tubing.
Yeah.
I just put it on, shrink it over the stover with a lighter or a hair dryer or whatever. And that's just to protect the threads.
Yeah.
I think the hardest part is actually cutting this.
How did you do that?
I use a Dremel tool. Or what do you guys call it? A rotary tool.
Like a router?
No, like the the Dremel tools that are handheld.
Oh. Yeah, I don't even know.
I think you guys call them a rotary tool.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like a hobby tool.
Yeah. Rotary.
So
whatever.
I use that. I mark it out with tape and just route it out or sand it out of there. That's the hardest part because anybody can paint.
Yeah.
For painting, I just tape it off. Actually, you don't have to paint them.
So you could have it clear.
Yes,
Yeah.
but
It's
if
just,
all of
it's
these
better
were,
in my
if all of
opinion.
these were clear, you would not see the fish.
Yeah.
I mean, you could see them, but for my eyes, I'm an old guy.
Yeah.
When they're white, I can first off see them. I can also see if they've eaten.
Makes everything pop stand out.
Yeah, exactly.
All you're gonna need is, I guess, the hose from the pump.
Yep, you'll need a little piece of. Most people have that's just.
Flexi hose.
It's just 1/2 inch flexible vinyl, and then
Like
you need some sort of filter.
Yeah.
Now you probably could filter this all with sponge filters, air driven, if you want, but you're going to have a place for the air to come up.
Yeah.
And I used to have an Aqua Clear 70 on the end instead of a canister filter, but I feel like it worked, but the canister filter would give me a more stable biological filter bed.
Definitely.
And I probably haven't cleaned that for 2 years.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not a lot of large particles.
That's right. So it's
So-
keeping it clean.
Right.
Keeping the main water volume clean.
Right.
And then just the little taps and that main bar at the top that you
Yep.
can see.
Yep.
I also like how you've gone with the stiff tubing.
Oh, yeah. So this is officially Lee's rigid airline tubing.
Yep.
So in the United States, Lee's is the only company, I think, that makes rigid airline tubing. And they make all the different sizes of tubing, up to 13/16 diameter.
Yeah.
This is officially called rigid airline tubing because obviously it fits on airline. The straight ones are my air, which go just a little bit above the bottom of the tray.
Yeah.
And they're only in there. The only reason air is in there is to break up that surface film.
Yeah.
You know, if there's no air movement on the surface, then you get that surface slime coat, and I don't want that because fry can't eat through that.
And is it when the bubble pops, I guess? Because
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then the water ones are the same. I mean, obviously this has algae on the inside.
yeah.
That's mainly because there's a light up there that is. I bend them because I like to be able to direct that flow a little bit.
Yeah, and then you can see it. It's not straight into the water.
Right. And I can see. Okay, I can see that flow's bigger than that flow. You know.
Yeah.
I can see it, and
The last thing I want to point out, which is going to make this whole system easier as well, is those zip ties with the
yeah.
holding thing on it.
Yes.
I don't know what
So those are. Let me think if I can think of the word. They are. They're a zip tie from the electrical industry.
Yeah.
Right now, I forget the name of them, but they're sold with a hole that's designed for a screw. It just so happens that this tube slides through that hole.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's perfect. It's
Now, I've made them so if you look at it, they can tilt out of the way.
yeah.
They can also slide.
along.
I've made them that way on purpose. So that when you put them on the pipe, don't cinch it so tight that you can't move it.
Yeah.
Leave it to have a little bit of play. I bought them just on a whim, and it just happened to fit perfect. And I wasn't even thinking of, when I bought them, I wasn't even thinking of using them for this.
Yeah.
It was for some other project.
Yeah.
But then when I saw that tube went through, I'm thinking, oh man, that would hold
Thousand
really
different
good.
things,
Yeah, yeah. The other thing you can do, which isn't really evident, but on these trays, if you want to cut this slot lower down, you can lower the level of water in the tray.
True. Yeah.
So if you have really super sensitive fish that you're breeding that have to be like in an inch of water,
Maybe some whiptails that need
just
tiny
yeah,
food
just
area.
make a slot lower
Yeah.
and make one tray for them. I mean, they're not hugely expensive. I think I want to say $5 to $8 each. That's not a really big expense.
And that's actually a good point. How much do you reckon this system would cost for like a rough guess, I guess?
Okay, without the trays, about $100.
Yeah.
And that would
that's
be,
a good
that would be
investment,
if
really.
you had the tank.
Yeah.
Or if you got the tank for $1 per gallon sale.
Yeah.
The trays are going to run you say $5 to $8 each.
Yeah.
And the thing is, if you go from here to there, one spawn pays for the whole system
Oh yeah.
easily, right?
And it makes life so much easier.
Yeah. It's just you got to think of the time to can you build this?
Yeah.
And I would say I've given a fry system talk I think 23 times around the United States.
Yeah.
And I would say almost anybody I've met could build it.
Awesome.
So, yeah,
Well, thanks for showing us that, Dean. It's
you bet.
going to help a heap of people out, me especially.
Yeah.
And yeah, see you guys in the next one.
All right. Cheers.